Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. It happened in front of 12 people. Dinner party. Soft lights. 2 bottles of wine already open. A playlist she'd curated weeks ago hummed in the background. Laughter came easy for everyone else. I was already watching her from across the room, the way she leaned in when he spoke. I didn't recognize the man. Tall. Overconfident. That cheap kind of charisma that makes women laugh harder than they should. She wasn't touching him. Not exactly. But she might as well have been. Her laugh was too loud. Her smile lingered too long. And when I brought over her drink, the one she always asked for, 3 cubes, no lemon, she barely looked at me. Then it happened. He said something. She leaned in, hand on his arm. Someone made a joke, and she turned, looked at me across the table and said, "Don't worry, babe. He's just more exciting than you tonight." The table laughed. Lightly. Nervously. But I didn't. I didn't say a word. I just looked at her, and that silence was the last thing she expected. No reaction. No defense. No scene. Just a pause. And in that pause, everything shifted. They thought it was just a joke. That I'd brush it off. That I'd play along. But something inside me stopped moving. Not because I was hurt. Because I was done. I left early. No argument. No goodbye. Just stepped out into the night and walked 5 blocks in silence. She didn't follow. She assumed I'd cool off, circle back, beg for clarification. That's how it always worked before. But this time wasn't like before. Because this time, I wasn't angry. I was clear. That moment didn't hurt me, it freed me. And she had no idea what was coming next. Not revenge. Not a fight. Just subtraction. Because while she was still performing, still playing with the edges of someone else's attention, I had already started rewriting the ending. She had broken something that wouldn't be repaired. And now, she was about to find out what it feels like when a man doesn't yell, doesn't argue. He simply vanishes. 2 days later, I got the confirmation. It wasn't from her. It never is. It came from a place she forgot to lock, her shared playlist account. We used to build those together. It synced across all her devices, and she never changed the login. That morning, a new playlist appeared. Title: Rewind/Restart. The cover photo was from a trip she'd told me she regretted missing. A lake in Colorado. The first track? A love song we'd once slow danced to in a dark kitchen, barefoot, wine-drunk, half-laughing. The second song had his name in the lyrics. The third was one I didn't recognize. I played it once. A line stood out. "You didn't lose me. You just stopped chasing." It wasn't just a playlist. It was a message. Not to me, to herself. Or maybe to him. And suddenly, the dinner party scene made more sense. That night hadn't been a slip. It was her test. She wanted to see how far she could push without losing comfort. How much attention she could steal without losing the home I provided. She was baiting me. Hoping I'd get jealous. React. Start chasing. Because if I chased, it meant she still mattered. It meant she was still wanted, even if she wasn't loyal. But I didn't bite. And that's what changed everything. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask about the playlist. I didn't even bring up the man at the table. I logged out of the account and deleted the app. Then I started pulling back. Quietly. I turned off shared locations. Unlinked our calendars. Removed my name from the dinner reservations we used to rotate each month. Took my passport from the drawer where she used to toss mail. None of it loud. None of it cruel. Just space. And she felt it. Because the next day, she texted something small, a photo of a dog at the park near our old spot. "He looks like Scout." Scout was the dog we almost adopted but didn't. She used the memory like a hook. I left it on read. She didn't double text. Because deep down, she knew something had shifted. This wasn't sulking. This wasn't emotional warfare. This was distance. Strategic. Unnegotiable. She'd spent months thinking she could walk the edge and never fall. Now, for the first time, the edge was behind her. And the silence ahead? It was mine. Patterns always show up before proof. That week, I started watching the silence between us. It had changed shape. Not empty. Just scripted. Like she was performing commitment instead of living it. The way she'd text just enough to seem present. The delayed responses. The weekend plans that suddenly shifted into solo self-care retreats. She wasn't cheating in the way movies show it. No lipstick on collars. No hotel receipts. But she was gone long before she left. And then, one night, the proof caught up to the pattern. I was on the couch. Her laptop set open on the kitchen counter, left behind after she rushed out for a friend's art thing. Something in me hesitated, then moved. It wasn't snooping. It was clarity. The mail tab was still open. So was her cloud drive. I clicked. Once. That's all it took. A folder marked drafts. Inside, screenshots of messages with someone named Tyler. He wasn't a friend. He wasn't new. He was familiar. The messages weren't explicit, but the tone was worse. They read like a slow audition. Emotional intimacy wrapped in jokes. Late-night thoughts. Hidden compliments. Flirtation without fingerprints. One message caught me. If he knew how often I think about leaving, maybe he'd fight harder. No anger. Just a note to self, sent to someone else. I didn't copy anything. Didn't take screenshots. Didn't leave a trace. I closed the laptop, wiped my hands on a towel, and stared at the wall for a long time. Not because I didn't know what to do, but because I already knew exactly what came next. I didn't bring it up when she came home. Didn't ask questions. I just told her I'd be out of town for a bit. Work trip, maybe longer. She barely asked for details. She assumed I was giving her space. What I was giving her was the first taste of distance she couldn't control. The next morning, I left before sunrise. I cleared my location history, used my backup card for expenses, booked a rental under a separate profile. She texted once. Safe flight. I didn't reply. She wanted me to fight, to demand, to crack open a scene she could control. But all I gave her was absence. And while she stared at her phone waiting for a ping, I was somewhere she couldn't trace, finally breathing in a life without performance. She had created a story where I'd beg. Instead, I disappeared, and she hadn't even realized. The chapter had already closed. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not my brother. Not my coworkers. Not even the neighbor who sometimes brought our packages in. That Monday morning, I drove 3 states away, checked into a minimalist Airbnb on a coastal bluff, and shut everything down. New number. Private account. No forwarding address. She wasn't blocked. That would have made it obvious. She was left on read. That's worse, because it lets them spiral in real time. At first, the messages came spaced out, little things. Safe flight. Miss you already. Let me know if you land okay. Then nothing for a day. Then, are you okay? Then, did I do something? Then silence again. And I just watched. Not with satisfaction. With finality. This wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't emotional chess. I wasn't proving a point. I was simply gone, not for drama, but for peace. I deleted shared calendars. Cut off all syncs. Pulled my name from bills, platforms, mail. In a single week, I made myself invisible to the life we built together. Not erased. Just inaccessible. And that was louder than anything I could have said. She started calling after 4 days. First late at night, then early in the morning. One of them came while I was drinking coffee on the porch overlooking a silent shoreline. I let it ring. She followed it with a voicemail. Breathless. Not crying. Not yet. But you could hear the confusion in her tone, like someone waking up from a dream and realizing the house is empty. Still, I didn't call back. Because the version of me she was speaking to didn't exist anymore. She had played a slow game of erosion. Pushing boundaries, testing responses, wearing down trust one casual betrayal at a time. Now she was searching for the man she thought would still be standing at the edge of the damage, arms open, waiting. But I wasn't there. And that absence? It was louder than any confrontation. Because nothing breaks a person more than realizing the thing they took for granted has no interest in being restored. She had counted on my loyalty. What she didn't count on was my silence. And in that silence, she was starting to drown. Her lover wasn't a mystery anymore. Tyler. The same name from the messages. The one she flirted with under the table while I was building a life she could lean on. I didn't confront him. I didn't threaten. Instead, I watched. Men like him always have tells. Loose ends. Ego trails. They leave fingerprints because they want to be noticed. I found his startup page through an old tagged photo. Turns out he was running a consultancy firm. Not big. Not stable. The kind of project that relied more on image than infrastructure. A few clicks deeper, I found inconsistencies. Client names with no reviews. Fake testimonials. Licenses that didn't match state records. I didn't expose him. I curated him. I took what I found, quietly, and passed it through a whisper network. A friend of a friend who knew someone in corporate compliance. An anonymous tip to a watchdog blog that loved outing professional frauds. No trace to me. No signature. No confrontation. Just pressure. The kind that builds slowly. 2 weeks later, His site was offline. 3 weeks in, his name vanished from a partnership listing. I didn't celebrate. I didn't watch it unravel in real time. I went hiking that morning, and when I returned, there was another voicemail from her. This one wasn't calm. There was a crack in her voice. Not because she knew I'd done something. She didn't. But because things around her were falling apart, and I wasn't there to hold anything steady. She tried to reach me through nostalgia again. Mentioned a restaurant we used to visit. Said she missed the way I looked at her when we were alone, when she still felt like the center of something. But I'd stopped orbiting her world long ago. She was spinning now, and no one was reaching out to catch her. Not her lover. Not her friends. Not me. She thought I'd come back when things got messy. That I'd step in, clean up, rebuild. But what she never understood is that men like me don't burn things. We just stop showing up to fix them. And when we leave, it's not about making a statement. It's about letting the collapse speak for itself. It's strange how people vanish before they realize they're alone. That's what happened to her. Not with me, that had already occurred. This time, it was everyone else. It started subtly. The group chats she used to light up with updates and memes? She stopped getting replies. Her posts got fewer likes. Not because people hated her, but because no one knew where she stood anymore. She lost the thread. The girl who had once been magnetic, always at the center, always shaping the mood, was now background noise. A few weeks after I disappeared, one of our mutuals hosted a small dinner. I didn't go. She did. I heard about it later from someone who used to be her friend. They said she looked tired. Not in the way work exhausts you, in the way pretending drains you. Someone made a harmless joke about men disappearing. The room shifted. She didn't laugh. Just stared at her glass like it held something she forgot how to enjoy. And then came the line. From across the table, one of the quieter guests, a cousin of the host, I think, leaned in and said, "You really thought no one would notice?" The words weren't cruel. They were honest. And that honesty hit harder than any public shaming ever could. She didn't fight back. She smiled. A tight, brittle thing. Then excused herself early. After that, I started hearing about canceled plans. No-shows. A few of her own friends muttering about weird energy or too much drama. But there was no drama. Just absence. No one turned on her. They just stopped leaning in. Because when your center disappears, when the man who grounded you steps away without noise, the rest of the world follows. Not to be loyal to him, but because the weight of your lies becomes heavier when he's no longer there to balance them. And me? I wasn't celebrating. I was watching the machine she built slowly grind to a halt. She had played so well, smiles, stories, distractions. But now, in rooms where she used to shine, people noticed the shadow. Not mine. Hers. A reputation fraying without a single raised voice. A life collapsing in slow motion. Not because of what I said, but because of what I didn't. And that silence? It was becoming the loudest thing in every room she walked into. She started posting again. Not the way she used to, curated shots, clever captions, life in control performance. These were different. Photos of sunsets, coffee cups, long, fake quotes about growth and silence. Stories with muted backgrounds and no music. People call it healing, but it wasn't that. It was a broadcast of loneliness. The kind you hope someone specific is watching. I didn't follow her anymore, but I saw it. She hadn't blocked me. Couldn't. Part of her still believed I might scroll through, see the shift, feel something. But what she didn't know, I wasn't scrolling. I was already standing in front of her. Not literally, but close enough. We crossed paths once, not by accident, not by design. Same street, late afternoon. She was walking with her head down. No makeup. Hair in a rushed knot. She looked up. Saw me. Everything in her paused. Her eyes searched for softness. They didn't find it. I nodded once. Polite. Detached. Then walked past without slowing. She turned as if to speak, then stopped. Because even she could tell. I wasn't angry. I wasn't waiting. I was just gone. That moment rewrote everything. Because until then, she thought I might come back if she just performed the right version of regret. But I wasn't coming back. And her world felt it. She started reaching out through friends, indirectly. Casual mentions. Have you seen him? He looks different. One of them sent a message she clearly didn't intend for me to read. She says she dreams about him. Not the old him. The new one. The one who didn't ask for explanations. The one who never raised his voice. The one who walked away without slamming doors and never came back. She tried one last thing. She messaged about my mother. Asked how she was doing. Said she missed her. I didn't respond. Because when someone has access to your past but no place in your future, the most violent thing you can do is nothing. She was alone now. Not because she was abandoned, but because she built a life no one could stay inside. And the man she once knew? He still walked those streets, still breathed the same air. But he was no longer hers. He was a ghost with a pulse. And she was the one haunted. The message came on a Tuesday afternoon. Short. Careful. Can we talk? Just once. I didn't answer. Not then. Not to agree. But I showed up the next evening. Neutral ground. A quiet cafe tucked into a side street where no one would interrupt and no one would watch her unravel. She was already there. Hair done. Eyes tired. Voice shaking when she spoke my name. I sat down. Didn't order anything. Didn't smile. Just waited. She started slow, with small apologies that sounded like rehearsed lines. Then she moved to nostalgia. Our first trip. The way I used to laugh when I couldn't sleep. The sweater she still wore. None of it landed. Because I wasn't in that past anymore. She leaned forward. Asked if I hated her. Said she didn't know how it all went so cold. I stayed silent. Not as punishment. But because nothing I could say would matter more than what she was hearing now, the absence of everything I once gave. She reached across the table. Touched my hand. It stayed still. Then she whispered something I wasn't supposed to hear. I thought you'd fight harder. And there it was. The truth behind all the games. She never wanted to lose me. She wanted to measure her power. To feel wanted. To test the limits of forgiveness without ever earning it. But what she forgot was that not every man plays forever. Some of us leave the table. She sat back then, eyes wide, like she'd finally realized this wasn't a conversation. It was a farewell. She tried one more time, said she could change, that we could rebuild, that I was the only one who ever really saw her. I stood up. No anger, no final line, just movement. She called my name as I walked away. Once, twice. The third time, her voice broke. But I didn't turn. Because sometimes silence is the only closure that doesn't lie. I left that cafe knowing she would replay that moment over and over, looking for something in my face she could hold on to. But I hadn't brought any pieces of myself to that table. Just the version of me she never expected. The man who doesn't come back. The fallout wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. And that made it worse. Her name began to disappear from things, shared projects, dinner invites, circles that once orbited her energy. No scandal. No announcement. Just distance. The kind you can't trace back to a single moment. One by one, she was replaced in places she used to anchor. Her lover? Gone. He'd left without ceremony, just like I had, only faster, because men like him don't stay once attention fades. Her friends? They drifted. They didn't confront her. They just got tired of asking the questions she didn't want to answer. At work, she lost momentum. Clients dropped. A leadership role was quietly reassigned. Her phone buzzed less. I didn't have to do anything. She unraveled herself, one thread at a time. And while she slipped further into the silence she once thought she could control, I was already building something else. I changed gyms, started cooking again, picked up an old camera I hadn't touched in years and began shooting people, places, light through glass. It wasn't about healing. It was about clarity. I wasn't becoming someone new. I was becoming who I'd been before her. Only this time, unedited. Someone once told me heartbreak makes men either poets or shadows. I chose both. Not to express the pain, but to witness the peace that followed. She reached out once more. A longer message. Carefully written. No pleading. Just reflections. She said she understood now. That I hadn't left out of anger. That I hadn't vanished to hurt her. I left because I had nothing left to stay for. She admitted she lost more than a relationship. She lost the version of herself she once recognized in my eyes. I didn't reply. There was no cruelty in my silence. Only truth. She wasn't asking for me back. She was trying to feel seen one last time. But the man who used to reflect her best self? He didn't live here anymore. She had broken the mirror. And now all she saw was the version of herself that remained. One that could no longer blame the silence on anyone else. Months had passed since the dinner party, the night everything shifted. I had built something new, not flashy, not public, just quietly stable. My routine no longer revolved around her or the chaos she had created. I woke early, ran further, worked harder, lived clearer. She had become someone I used to know, glimpsed only briefly in passing, never fully entering my space. But one evening, as I returned home, I found a small envelope slipped under my door. My name scrawled on it, handwriting shaky, unsure. I knew instantly it was hers. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Her words filled it, hesitant and careful. She wrote about regret, the coldness of her days, the emptiness of the rooms we once shared. She spoke of clarity, of understanding too late, what it meant to lose something real. She didn't beg. She didn't plead. She just wondered, in shaky letters, if there was any way to repair what she had broken. I read it slowly, not because I needed time to absorb it, but because this was the closure she was desperately searching for. The closure I'd found months ago when I stepped out into the night without looking back. She had spent our entire relationship testing boundaries, searching for excitement at my expense. Now, she finally understood the cost. I folded the letter carefully, without emotion, and placed it back into the envelope. Then I walked to the window, looking out over a city that once felt heavy with memories. Now it was just another city, no longer defined by her. There was no anger in me, no resentment, just calm, quiet clarity. Because the version of me who might have read that letter and felt a stir of hope had long since vanished. I never replied. No final words. No goodbye. Just the silent truth that there was nothing left to say. She thought losing me was the painful part. But the real agony came from knowing she had no one left to blame but herself. As I dropped her letter into the trash, I realized I had given her exactly what she always said she wanted: space. She wanted silence. She got it. Now, the silence was hers alone. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. And that's the last truth she would hear from me, spoken without words, louder than any voice could carry. Real men don't explode. They exit. Subscribe for more power stories.